everyone, it's Lisa Ross, also known as Paper Daisy Creations, and today I'm going to show you some tricks for weaving in ends as you go. Now, in the Line Dance MCAL, I ask you to cut and weave in ends quite a bit, so I'm going to show you how I do this as I go. There's actually two different things that we're going to work on. So one is weaving in the tail of the yarn that we're finished with, and then the other is weaving in the starting tail of the yarn that we're joining. Now, I'm going to show you how I do this for the Line Dance MCAL pattern, but you can use these techniques in any pattern. Just remember, you're probably not going to be starting with one color and joining another color mid-row. So to start with, I'm going to purl 4 just according to the pattern. Okay, I'm ready to join my new yarn. Most patterns you'll be joining at the beginning of a row. For this one, we're beginning in the middle of the row. So I'm beginning by knitting through the back loop. I'm just going to do that like I normally would. And now I'm going to show you a few different things. So we're going to do a couple things all at once. So the first is that the new yarn, we're going to hold the tail of the yarn with the working yarn. And we're going to work the next few stitches as if this is a single strand of yarn. We're going to do that for about 4 stitches, and that's going to just lock in that tail. So this is the yarn that we're joining, and working the first few stitches as if it's a single strand, it's going to weave in that tail, and you'll just have a little bit to clip either when you finish the project or when you're ready to block. The other thing that we're going to be doing is weaving in this yarn that we're finished with behind the project as we go. And I have a few different ways to show you how to do that. So one I know I recommend a lot is the Weave and Steven method because Stephen West has an excellent tutorial. But I do it a couple of shortcut ways, and I'm going to share those with you now. Okay, I'm working the next stitch in my pattern. For me, this is a make one left. Okay, and now I'm going to keep holding this yarn tail together with the working yarn. And I just need to remember that any stitches that are created that way, this is only a single stitch. So even though there are 2 strands of yarn here, this is a single stitch when I come back to it. So it's very important that I remember that. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is trap this yarn behind the working yarn. The easiest way to do it is to just cross it over, clockwise or counterclockwise, either way, as long as it crosses the working yarn, and work the next stitch. You work the next stitch as you normally would, and then for every other stitch, you're going to work where you cross the strands. And that is similar to the Weave and Steven method that you may already be familiar with. Now I'm going to show you a couple of shortcut ways to do the same thing. What we're doing is trapping that yarn behind here. So this yarn tail is getting trapped along the back of our work. And there are some shortcut ways to do it. If you know how to trap floats while you are knitting color work, then all we're doing is trapping the float every other stitch in order to get that yarn trapped behind our work. Now, if I am holding the working yarn, okay, I've already worked 4 stitches with the yarn tail held together. So at this point, I'm going to drop the tail, and I'm just using the working yarn. So in order to do this, I'm going to, if I'm an English style thrower like this, I would trap the yarn like so. I'm going to go into the next stitch, go under the yarn that I'm trapping, and I work the next stitch. Remember, I'm only trapping it every other stitch, so I'm working one as normal. Then I go into the stitch, go under the yarn I'm trapping, and I knit the working yarn. And that does that same thing of trapping it behind our knitting. Another way to do it, if I am holding the working yarn in my left hand like a continental style knitter, this is how I can trap the yarn. I'm going to go into the next stitch, then I take the yarn that I am trapping and wrap it around the needle. I pull the working yarn over like I'm going to knit with it, but before I knit with it, I pull the yarn I'm not using back behind the needle because I don't actually want to knit it. And it does that exact same thing of trapping the yarn. I worked 1 stitch as normal, go into the next stitch, I pull this yarn I'm not using around the needle, get ready to knit the next stitch, pull the yarn behind the needle, and now it's trapped. There's one more shortcut way that I can do it, and this is how I do it most of the time, being that I am a continental style knitter. What I like to do is when I'm going to trap the yarn, I'm going in, but before I knit the next stitch, I just take my extra fingers and I hold that yarn so that I can go under it, knit the next stitch, pull the yarn I'm not using over the yarn to trap it, and I knit that stitch. I'm going to show you this again, but I'm going to have to get to the other side of the stitch marker. All right, I worked my make one right. I'm going under this stitch, and then these fingers right here hold that yarn up so that I can go under and trap it, and I knit the next stitch. Remember, you're only trapping the yarn every other stitch. If I tried to do it again here, the yarn would be very loose, just laying on top. It would not actually be trapped. So the next stitch is worked as normal, and I can also trap it while working a make one left, which is what I would be doing right here. So I'm going under that strand, picking up the working strand, pulling the yarn I'm trapping behind it, and knitting this. Okay, now that is 4 different ways of trapping your yarn along the back. You do not have to trap it for the entire length of your work. I usually do probably 2 inches. I like to just secure it behind the back of my knitting, and then I can clip the yarn that I'm finished using. I hope you find this really helpful. When I'm knitting a multicolored project, I can knit almost the entire project with just one end to weave in at the end by using some of these techniques. Remember, when you're holding that working tail double, when you come back to those stitches, work them as a single stitch. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches right here held double, and sometimes it helps to count them as you come back to them. For the other methods of trapping behind your work, I recommend finding the option that you like best and watching it several times and trying it several times. And in this clue, you're going to get a lot of chances to practice that stitch. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you all very happy knitting.